Hi everyone, it's Mary from Gettysburg Homestead. Let's talk about what you might need to start your journey in rug hooking. Now, I'm a beginner, so I'm only going to show you what I know and what I use as compared to what others use and what works for them. This is only what works for me. Let's talk about backings. I like to use primitive linen for most of my rug hooking. Now there's other things such as burlap, monk's cloth, rug warp, and depending upon what you're going to be making will depend upon what backing that you're going to use. Almost everything that I make is not going to be a rug on the floor, so I can get away with using the linen. If you're making a big rug for the floor, I would suggest probably rug warp from what I've heard. I've never personally used it, so I can't really answer that question as an expert because I'm not. So I've also used burlap. Now, just so that you know, burlap is very weak. It has a lot of fibers and it can be difficult to hook on. I've made some of my hooked corn with it only because I know it's just for decoration. But when it comes time to finishing the corn, sometimes it's difficult to stitch together and to use. So that's why I've been doing linen. So let me show you some of the linen that I've used and why I like it. So I'm going to move this camera a little bit so that you can see. All right. So I have two linens here. This first one here, it's a very, very, very tight weave. And let me tell you, some of the wool, which I'm going to go over here in just a little bit, is difficult to pull through some of these holes. This happens to be very soft and has a nice drape to it, so it was nice to hook with. And like I say, most of the things that I make are for ornamental decoration. Now, I just ordered this linen. This is a primitive linen, and as you can kind of see, the holes in it are a little more loose. They're bigger, the holes are bigger, so this is going to be a lot easier to hook with the wool that I use, because I only, and I'll go over this later, but I only use a number 8, which I'll explain later, again, like I just said. So it's easier to pull through here. You can get this online. I just happened to order this from the Old Tattered Flag, and it looks like it's $35 a yard, because I buy a yard at a time because I never know, and that way I have extra. There are other places that you can buy it online or in a store maybe that you have near you that has rug hooking wool and backings and whatever you need to rug hook. I like it because it's easy to work with, and I stitch on linen, so I thought linen would be the best bet for me to use. So, but I've also heard for beginners, monk cloth might be good because you have white lines that will help you keep whatever it is that you're hooking straight. That's kind of hard when you're using linen because of the fibers, the linen fibers that they use to try to keep when you draw whatever it is that you're hooking onto your backing. But for me, it hasn't really mattered, so that's why I like using this. Now, wool, like I said, I would talk about. You should if you're going to use recycled wool, you should always wash it, because otherwise it's not going to hook very well. Take it from someone who has found out. When you try to push your hook through and pull your loop up through, you will shred that wool. So if you wash it, all of the fibers and dry it will all shrink up and will give you a nice thick looking wool. I'm not quite sure I can get this, but I'm trying. A nice thick wool to hook with, and your hook will glide in and out. So, but if you're going to use recycled wool, there are many tutorials online to wash the wool before you cut it to use it. Now, personally, I have done recycled wool, meaning I've gone to the thrift store, I've bought blazers, I've bought skirts, and yes, I have used them, but you have to make sure that it's 100% wool, because if it isn't, it will have other rayon or polyester or whatever mixed in with it, which is not what you want. You want 100% wool. And then you have to go through and deconstruct whatever it is that you bought, whether it's a blazer, whether it's a skirt, pants. You have to deconstruct it, wash it, dry it, cut it. It just takes longer. Is it cheaper? Absolutely, it's cheaper. Have I done it? Yes, I've done it. Because I don't have a lot of money, so you make do with what you can do. But I am finding that it's harder to find in the stores because people just don't wear 100% wool anymore, any clothing anymore. So now I will order my wool online, which all you got to do is Google it. And if you want me to tell you where I get mine, I can. You can get them pre-cut, or you can cut them yourself. Now, this one is cut at a number 8, which is 1/4 of an inch wide. For me, that is the easiest to hook with, and from what I have read, this is more for primitive hooking, which is what I do. I now will cut my own wool, which you don't have to have a fancy cutter. Are they out there? Yes. Are they expensive? Yes. You can get different types of them where you can cut multiple strips at a time. I know the Old Tattered Flag has one of those, or you can get one that maybe cuts with a blade 2 or 3 at a time. For me, I have small projects. It doesn't bother me, so I just have my cutting mat, I have my rotary cutter, and I have a ruler, and I cut what I need. That helps me save on expenses. So, there are different sizes of worms. These are called worms that you can use for whatever project that you're doing. Now, there are different blades that you can cut for different sizes. Like I said, for me, it's just easier to cut with my ruler and my rotary cutter. So I will cut whatever it is I need, but for the most part, I use a number 8 or 1/4 of an inch. Now, for the important part is the hook. There are different types of hooks, and you have to find what works for you. This happens to be the hook that when I first started, I went to a wool and fiber art show with my mom. Boy, this is not focusing. Here in where I live, and the person happened to be selling these hooks. It fits perfectly in my hand, and I can cradle it in my hand, and that way I can just dig and get whatever it is I want. Now, if you notice, boy, this does not want to focus. Let's pull away. Okay, so it kind of reminds me of a latch hook without the extra little piece of metal right here. And that's what people often ask is it kind of like latch hook? Well, sort of. And I used to do latch hook when I was a kid. Oh boy, did I love doing that. Anyway, but this is what your hook looks like. It's just a simple hook that you use to pull your wool up through the holes in your backing. So, like I said, there's many different kinds. but this is what I happened to use and it was cheap. So, all right, next up, I'll show you what kind of, you do need a frame. Now, do I know people who have not used frames? Absolutely. I find it difficult to do. So the first type of a frame that you could use would be what's called a Morgan frame. It's a plastic frame that has a metal clamp on the top, not one of the wood ones. Those do not get tight enough to hold your backing. So, and these ones, I bought this years ago so that I could use it for my punch needle. And I love this thing because you can see that it has this ridge here that fits into a groove on this one. And that's what holds your backing drum tight so that you can, you know, hook without it letting loose while you're trying to hook. Now, the only thing with a Morgan hook, or Morgan hoop, excuse me, is that when you hook, you have to have both hands free. So this, what you'll have to do is, for those of us who have the midlife pouch, I'll put it nicely, you can rest that, you can rest part of it on your belly, and then you can lean it up against a table. You will have to hook at a table so that you can have both hands free to hook. This frame is not big enough to hook with. I've tried, and it's just, you just have to keep moving it. Now, would it work? Oh, absolutely it would work. But you would just have to keep moving whatever it is that you're hooking around inside of it. So what I did back after I started, I had somebody make a frame for me. You can buy these online, but I just happen to know a couple people. A guy at work made the frame for me after I told him what I wanted. I told him the dimensions that I wanted, and he built that. Well, then I had bought, you will need to have, they're like, boy, I got some fuzz in it. Anyway, they're gripper strips. And this is what helps hold your backing in place and tight when you're trying to hook. Let me tell you that if you use one of these, I highly suggest that you get a cover for it, which I'll show you my cover that I made, because this, if you rest your hand anywhere, will tear up your arms, your wrists, your hands with tiny, teeny little micro scratches everywhere, and they burn. Trust me, I know. But anyway, mine, I think you can see here, mine's built at a slant because that way this part is facing me and it's tilted up. Now, would you have to do that? No, but I like it. And it sits, this part sits on my lap, so my both hands are free so that I can use this. So then after, like I said, after my friend built this part, we added this part so that I could hook. Now, you could buy these online. This isn't, you know, if you have a handy significant other, you could probably, you know, build your own. I'd really like to have one that stands on the floor, but that's out of my price range. So for what I do, this works perfectly. Now, I made, like I said, a cover. This is fleece, extra fleece that I had that I just sewed in elastic, made little, you know, I don't know, I think it was a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, anyway, and then I ran elastic through it, and then it just fits over my frame because I do like to rest my hands. Oh boy, I got this all messed up here. But anyway, it fits. Boy, I do have this all messed up. So anyway, it just fits on here and will protect your arms, your hands, whatever it is, from getting torn up when you're hooking. And trust me, it does work. I love it. And I don't hook without it. Um, so it's just an idea. I think you can buy these on Etsy or whatever. You can make your own. I just made my own because you guys know how I am. I'm cheap. Now, I have seen online where you can buy a starter kit if you've never hooked before and you don't have anything. You can get a frame. You can pick a pattern. I think you get a hook, and I think you get wool to be able to do a project to see if you like it. Now, the one that I saw, I'm reading, was from Old Tattered Flag, and I think it's like $115. Be aware that rug hooking is not cheap. Wool is expensive, unless, like I told you before, unless you go to the thrift store and find wool to buy and recycle it and cut it and do all that to it. Luckily, I've had the extra money when I needed it, and then I don't always use all of the wool that maybe I buy, and then I can use it in another project, so it kind of works out. But sometimes if I can, I prefer to buy the already cut wool, which you can do. Or if you just buy a kit, which if this is your first time rug hooking, you might want to buy a kit. That's what I started out with. That way I had everything I needed to do it. But if you're going to hook along with me, I think we're going to do that candy corn because it's pretty basic and pretty simple. So you will need orange, yellow, and white wool, or whatever colors you're going to use. It doesn't matter. It's your candy corn. Because I think on this one I might use brown, orange, and white, but I don't know yet. But this I just thought I would put out there so you know what you might need before we start for my virtual hook-in on September 19th through the 21st. We'll see you guys later.